Hello everyone, this is Lorena and today we will going to talk about the natural law ethics of St. Thomas Aquinas. But before that, let us first define what is natural law. Natural law is a theory refers to the general view that moral rules and principles are objective, absolute and universal truth that can be discovered in the nature of things, in structure of life itself through the use of reasoned reflection. So natural law holds that there are universal moral standards that are inherent in humankind throughout all time, and these standards should form the basis of a just society. What is natural law ethics? So, natural law ethics is a popular name attributed to the model of ethics by St. Thomas Aquinas during the medieval period. The medieval period was the period wherein the Catholic Church, the Roman Catholicism actually bloomed, and it was the period in which the Roman Catholicism came into power. And so we can therefore see that the ethics of St. Thomas Aquinas is actually grounded with Christian morality or with Christian teaching. And because it is developed by St. Thomas Aquinas, natural law ethics is also called Thomistic ethics. The basic idea of natural law ethics is that reason is the source of the moral law, and it directs us towards the good. According to Aquinas, the good is the ultimate goal of a person's action. And for Aquinas, the good is discoverable within the person's nature. This explains why the basic goal of natural law ethics is to do good and avoid evil. Now, how do we know that a person's action is right or wrong? Well, according to Aquinas, an act is morally right if it is done in accordance with the moral law. And now, what is moral law? As already mentioned, reason is the source of moral law. Hence, moral law is the dictate of reason. But for Aquinas, the moral law comes from God's eternal law. Indeed, for Aquinas, the moral law is the divine law expressed in human nature, which reads, "Do good and avoid evil." And so, if the moral law is doing good and avoiding evil, how do we know that one is acting in accordance with the good? Well, again, according to Aquinas, the good is that which is suitable in human nature, or which is proper to human nature. And for Aquinas, we know that an action is good and is suitable in human nature if it is done in accordance with the conscience. An action is good if it is done in accordance with conscience. Aquinas understands conscience as the inner voice of the intellect or reason, which calls the human person to follow the moral law, that is, to do good and avoid evil. As we can see in natural law ethics, conscience serves as the guide in making moral decisions. So how do we know that one's action obeys conscience? Well, according to Aquinas, an action obeys conscience if it is satisfies the four natural human inclinations of the human person, namely, self-preservation or survival, propagation of our species, to live in peace and in harmony with other men, and to seek for truth and knowledge of the God. Self-preservation or survival is that man has to preserve himself in existence. So the self-preservation is a natural inclination that urges the human person to take care of her health or not to kill or put herself in danger. So this explains why for Aquinas, suicide is absolutely wrong. The second one is the propagation of our own species. So any act of intervention, therefore, that frustrates the very purpose of the reproductive organ is unnatural, hence immoral. This explains why even masturbation is immoral in natural law ethics. Next is to live in peace and in harmony with other men. That is, just and fair dealing with others. So just dealing with others urge us to treat others with the same respect as we accord ourselves. Thus, for Aquinas, all forms of inhumanities such as exploitation, manipulation, seduction, cheating, kidnappings, murder are absolutely wrong. Next is to seek for truth and knowledge of the God. That is, to use his will and intellect to know the truth and seek the God, including his highest God, which is eternal happiness with
The
God.
contents of natural law. According to Agapay 1991-56, formal norms are those that related to our character, that is, to what kind of persons we ought to be, do good, and avoid evil. This means that we are naturally inclined to live in a moral and virtuous way. Following this law will make people happy and content because they will be close to God, their Creator. Formal norms are considered also a absolute principles and thus are unchangeable. It cannot be changed and it is universal across the cultures. Natural law and the church teaching on contraception. The use of artificial means to prevent the conception of the children through intercourse. So, for example, like pills, condoms, and other contraception. In church teaching, uh, it violated the primary precept, which means this is to reproduce and anal, oral intercourse, masturbation, homosexuality, and the like are considered also morally wrong because every sexual act should be viewed with the possibility of conceiving a child, and anything outside is considered as a sexual perversions. And abortion also violates the precept of preservation of life because it terminates human life at the fetal stage. And according to Aquinas, uh, we must uh, multiply and reproduce. It condemned because it prevents procreation, which Aquinas believed to be the only purpose of sex. It violates of the primary precept. Any sexual act contrary to this considered unnatural and therefore immoral. The Catholic Church has established its doctrines on the basis of Aquinas' natural law, and that is why the Catholic Church, even today, mainstream a strict adherence to the belief that contraception, not aim at procreation, is unnatural, sinful, and therefore immoral. The ideal purpose of sex is for reproduction within the confines of marriage. Natural law and the church teaching in on premarital sex. A declaration on certain questions concerning sexual ethics, Article 7, approved by Pope VI and issued by the Vatican in 1975. According to this article, premarital sex is wrong because having children outside of marriage is also considered immoral as it deprives children of stable environment they deserve in marriage. Sexual act is meant for procreation and not a recreation. So this is discouraged to the young to engage in consider the irresponsible act or morally wrong. It believed that sex should take place only within marriage and not outside marriage is a grave sin.